Cutting fabric on the bias in fashion designing. What does that mean? Let's take a look.
We're going to cover bias. What is bias? Why use bias? Why do we cut fabric on the bias? So let's get started.
So there's your fabric, right? The edge is the selvage, and there's your pattern with a grain line. Normally a grain line is parallel to the selvage. When you're laying your pattern into the fabric, that grain line must be parallel to the selvage. You measure one side and the other, it's parallel. So if you take a piece of fabric or muslin and you fold it like this, that fold is a 45-degree angle. That is bias. See that pattern? Center front on the bias. Now if your pattern does not have a grain line, you must establish a grain line. Create a little square with a ruler, connect two corners just like this, one to the other, and there's your grain line. The grain line is parallel to the selvage. Measure one side, measure the other, measure. Draping on the bias in fashion designing. Why? Listen.
Okay, so I've placed my bias on the center front of the form, placed a couple of pins here to hold it in place. You see, the thing about bias is that when you have a woven fabric, here's my selvage, it doesn't give, right? Length grain doesn't give, cross grain doesn't give. But on the bias, it does. It's slightly flexible, if you will. So, in fact, I invite you to take a piece of fabric and start draping something on the bias. You will see that it just hangs differently. And in fact, I'm going to continue with this in a minute and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Notice that there are no darts on this muslin. Usually to get something fitted like this on a form, on a body, you need darts. But because it's on the bias, you do not need any darts. Same thing goes with the back. Set the back on bias, trim, cut, pin, there you have it.